to everyone. Well, it is good afternoon. It's kind of just about good afternoon for most of us, but obviously with Christian here in Europe, he's definitely in the afternoon. This is Packaging Day, Thursday the 15th of October, and we're really pleased to have a session that Sean and I have been discussing for a bit of time together, really looking at those kind of key issues in the sort of flexible packaging market, particularly after COVID. And we put together a little program, little panel of speakers. Sean's going to share some big numbers with us. He's got Phil Smith from Backpack and Christian Cella from Bob's, who are going to give us some insight from their point of view. But I think it's going to be a great session. So Sean, straight over to you to share the opening slide and give us the proper intros for your panel today.
Fraser, thank you so much. I hope this is sort of working and you can see the thing. Thank you very much for the opportunity to spend some time in this event. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Phil Smith of what I still regard as Baker's, but is now Backpack, and congratulations, Steve, for that name. And Christian Cella from the undisputed market leader in packaging production equipment at Bost. And we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so addressing some of the features in the flexible packaging market, specifically with the impacts of COVID-19. So without further ado, we've identified some of the key issues that flexible packaging users, manufacturers and suppliers are facing. Short-term and long-term implications of COVID, sustainability, huge topic last year, maybe a little put onto the back seat with other things that are happening now, but it's not going away and it's going to be very important in the future. We want to talk about why flexible packaging has been so successful. It's convenient, it's lightweight, it does an awful lot of things that consumers, brands, retailers really value. But the traditional supply chain is under pressure. And by that, I mean the way that people are buying goods from supermarkets, more stuff is being handled online, the way that the supply chain has been developed to enable significant unit price volume reductions with volume. Maybe some of the new brands, the upstart, the emerging brands don't necessarily need that all the time. And then, of course, the big one that's been happening for many years is this arrival of a digital world as the world is digitizing in Industry 4.0. And we're fortunate to have Phil from one of the pioneers in digital printing, but it's not just the printing, it's everything else. Workflow, finishing, pack making, and distribution. And we'll talk about some of those factors there. And then hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes to talk about what's going to be happening in the future. So it's always good to get our crystal balls out there. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sean Smith. I classify myself as a print and packaging techie. I act as a consultant and an author for Smithers. And we produce an awful lot of data, and I'll share some of that with you in a minute. I also write for the trade press and anybody else who wants me to, frankly. And I also keep my fingers occasionally inky with activities in printing and print management. I've owned companies there and also in packaging, and I act as a non-exec at some stages. And I'm delighted to see there's a picture of a Bob's machine on the front of that magazine that I write for, Christian, so I hope you noticed that there. But if I can invite Phil to tell us a little bit about yourself and then about Backpack, please.
Yeah, certainly. So hello, everyone. Just a quick intro to myself, Phil Smith. I've been working in the labels and packaging industry for a number of years and have covered a lot of bases within the industry. And one of the key developments that I've always worked with has been digital, from the very early conception of the first digital label presses through to the machinery that we're seeing today, and taking that knowledge into digital flex pack, which in the Baker's business in Backpack, we're now 18 months into that project, which was sort of started from completely from scratch, putting in new equipment and developing that digital marketplace. So the FlexPack market is an area that is in the sort of the latter part of my career, taking all that digital and packaging knowledge from the labels industry into FlexPack. So yeah, just moving on to the next slide, we'll talk about Backpack in a bit more detail. So the Baker's business is a trade specialist. So we supply other label companies, we supply other flexible packaging companies, and we really pride ourselves on being at the forefront of technology. So, you know, we want to be making the investments ahead of the industry. We want to be talking to the industry about those investments because it's a proven business plan to be able to provide a service that other people are thinking of investing in, but maybe haven't quite got the justification to do it or don't fully understand the technology. So we've really pushed ourselves in labels in terms of new technology that has then spread throughout the industry, digital printing being the primary example of that. And moving into the Backpack side of the business, which is all about flexible packaging. So from print through to full pouch making within one environment, in one room, thermal lamination. It's all about speed to market. No long processes that we need to wait for during our production. So we want to be able to provide that sector of the market who are looking for a shorter run or a very high complexity in terms of number of SKUs or variable data in the digital market. So Backpack is fully up and running and fully operational now. The digital technology is working well. The thermal lamination is doing a great job, and the pouch machine is making some great product. So yeah, the journey is well underway now. But I know there's some exciting times ahead as we continue to grow in serving the market with our trade service. So that's
excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. We'll no doubt approach some of those in future. Christian, if I can give you the screen.
Thank you.
And invite you to introduce yourself, and I'm sure Bob needs no introduction, but you may give us a slight introduction.
I'm sure about that. Yes, I'm sure about that. So my name is Christian Cella. I'm the Strategic Marketing Director for the labels and flexible packaging industry for Bobst. I have almost 15 years of experience in the flexible packaging industry in several global roles on the converter side, also as a consultant. And thank you for the invitation and this opportunity to discuss this quite exciting time that we are in the flexible packaging industry. And I think we all can be very happy to be in this industry at that time when the entire industry moves into more sustainability and agility. Also what Phil was saying about Backpack before, it's all about sustainability and agility. And it's all about, for the brand owners, for example, to deliver to the final consumer the right product for the right time and the right price. And if we just move to the next slide, where we see that the industry is, and the brand owners are driven by the consumers by several trends in the industry, like urbanization, demographic developments, fast changing society, and also personalization, where digital printing fits in, and all the digitalization trend. And last but not least, also the plastic waste awareness that we all face at the moment in the flexible packaging industry. And all those expectations leads into a very high pressure on all the stakeholders in the industry. And we can go through, I mean, I will not go through the list now. It's already there for decades. The batch size diminution, the increasing complexity, the faster time to deliver it, the time to market from designing a package until it is really then in the supermarket available, quality control and all that stuff, and finally also sustainability that we will touch then later on. And if you go to the next slide, to answer all those challenges, I'm sure and convinced, and if I listen to Phil as well, it also goes in that direction for him to understand the full supply chain and the full value chain in the flexible packaging industry. And it goes from pre-material manufacturing until really the filling line of the brand owners to really understand what it means to answer those challenges in the industry. And for us in Bobst, it means from vacuum metallizing over coating, all printing technologies that you can imagine, until really lamination and the final production until it reaches the filling line. And together with our partners, we have proven in the last years, also for example, the hero samples that we have shown and on K-Show, that we have the innovation power in every production step together with the partners to have really, for example, full recyclable stand-up pouches and all those things. And if you go to the next slide, I think we could even say that it is important to think end-to-end and to know the industry by heart. And I think we have proven over the last decades how we know the industry of flexible packaging and the thinking end-to-end. So really from the specification PDF until really the digital twin, where we say it is the quality report and the final product. And this end-to-end thinking, I guess, is very important to understand the market transformation. And I think this market transformation driven by sustainability and agility is something that we will talk now in the next slides, right?
Yeah. Christian, thank you so much for that. That's a hugely informative overview of your activities, gentlemen, and what your companies are doing. To set the scene, I'm going to share some market data. And this is looking at flexible packaging as an overall industry, very wide, from sachets, tubes, stand-up pouches, retort pouches, form, fill, seal, bags, and specialist products up to industrial paper sacks and various other things. Smithers tracks all of these markets. And I'm going to share some global figures and some growth rates of general packaging and looking at flexible packaging in general. So if we look at the overall market, and this is the value of sales from converters, we saw it growing steadily from about 70 billion up to $80 billion in constant terms, taking out any impacts of inflation, any impacts of currency fluctuations across the world. In 2020, we're going to see some declines, and we'll talk about that. While some sectors have been doing particularly well, consumer, food, beverage, and essential non-discretionary purchases, other sectors have not been doing so well. So industrial, an awful lot of luxury packaging, cosmetics not doing very well. So we see a bit of a blip, but it's actually going to recover, we think, going forward in value terms. You can just about detect that the top line is orange with a sort of blue background. And this is looking at the analog, the flexo gravure production. And digital is that yellow band at the bottom that just about climbs out of the base of the graph in 2020. And this is the digital production. This is inkjet, this is electrophotography. That is slowly taking in there. It doesn't look very significant, but actually by 2025, that's going to be a couple of $1 billion worth of output being produced digitally. If we look at the volume in terms of billions of square meters, The market was approaching 265 billion square meters last year globally, falls down to about 252, then recovers back to the 2019 levels next year and continues growing going forward. In terms of volume, much lower proportion of digital. Where digital is being used at the moment is in higher value applications, both of materials, but also for issues that Phil was talking about at speed to market. Now, this graph shows the overall packaging. The grey lines to the left are the declines that we forecast for 2020. Now, it's fair to say that nobody quite knows how 2020 is going to end. We knew how it began, and that was very good. And we then saw COVID impacting in the Far East early in the year, slightly later in Europe and North America, and everywhere since that. And people have been fighting and changing and seeing different business models. But all packaging we see has declined in value terms in 2020. But the growth rates going forward, the orange areas, look quite healthy. Now, that's partly from the low base of 2020, but also the trends that both Christian and Phil were talking about in terms of urbanization, product demand, and increasing supply chains to get products from the manufacturers into consumers, and then increasingly beyond the consumer life, at the end of life of the product, where we're looking at cradle to cradle rather than cradle to grave conception, looking for more recycling and more other things, which we'll talk about in sustainability. But the prospects are good. 2020, well, we're 3/4 of the way through this year, and probably with, like many of us, I won't be too sad to see the end of it. If we see the volume declines, you'll see flexible packaging slightly behind labels and cartons, but projected to grow strongly. The value growth of flexible packaging, the highest of the packaging areas. And we'll talk about why that is. So those are the Smithers numbers that I wanted to share. And now is going to be the interesting part of the event, which is talking about how COVID and these other factors have impacted the industry to date. So, Phil, if I can ask you, Backpack was started early this year, maybe in hindsight, not the ideal timing. What's COVID-19 done for the short term of this new facility, this new development of your company?
Well, it's come at the time when we were mainly in development phase. So in terms of the business, it hasn't had a big impact. But what we have seen is that some projects for smaller brands in particular, which is a key area for digital production, not been the priority in terms of retailers. So retailers have had to prioritize on getting shelves restocked. So they've gone to their mainstream big volume suppliers, big brands, get the produce back on the shelves in that period where there was phases of panic buying and people emptying supermarket shelves. And I think that's put a bit of a squeeze on the smaller brands to try and sort of fight for their space and keep their development. But that's a very short-term blip. The longer-term picture is still that the smaller brands will be, gaining more and more supermarket space. But that's where they need the sort of the very low volume productions to actually get into the market. And we started to see a little bit of some projects not going as quickly as they could do because of that COVID effect. But we're starting to see them come back on stream now. And also our customer base is the flexible packaging market and the label market. So a lot of capacity was taken up in a very short space of time by the knock-on effect from panic buying in supermarkets and needing to restock the shelves. So, lead times for FlexPack companies were going out to very long periods, and that was their main focus, to try and get stuff through rather than looking at something that's completely new, a new concept to them, which is this short-run digital market space, which a lot of traditional flexible packaging companies haven't got the sort of headspace for within their business. But you know, that's going to change, and as we come out of COVID, and you know, trade hopefully continues to get back to normal without any further lockdowns, then we'll start to see that growth of small brands again gaining, you know, their presence and getting back to the growth levels that they were seeing last year, which was potentially faster than the big brands growing. When you put them all together, when you put all the small brands together, they're growing faster than the big brands are. But they cover a part of the marketplace that needs to be serviced with small MOQs and the flexibility to change designs regularly without, you know, the origination costs and timescales that can come from the traditional supply chain.
So it's been a bit of a delay, nothing
Yeah,
cancelled, and it's taken a little bit longer.
yeah,
Okay.
but it's come at a good time in our development, because you know we're developing new equipment and learning the whys and wherefores of flexible packaging, and so you know it's not been a bad thing for us to have that slightly.
I'm delighted to see that you've taken Steve's view of Steve Baker, the owner, who he and I have known each other probably for longer than either of us care to admit. He's one of the most optimistic and enthusiastic people I've ever met. So I'm glad to see he's. This is the first time I've heard it was a good time for COVID to happen for anybody to say. Christian, from Bob's perspective, I suspect it probably wasn't such a good thing. How is, in the flexible packaging sector particularly, how are your customers reacting, and what are they having to do in the short term to maintain their businesses? How's that impacting Bob's?
It was quite a challenging time for our customers, because as you can imagine that the demand on output was increasing dramatically from one day to another. They had to push a lot of volume into the supply chain to keep the shelves full and stuffed. And it was quite a challenging time. What we have seen is, and also talking to our customers, they are now from this big peak that they had with all the demands that they needed to fulfill. They are now loaded on a stable base and back to, I would say, normal business. But also what we have to say is that we see in some applications a shift from the product mix that is produced in flexible packaging due to some trends that were accelerated due to COVID. For example, what we see is more e-commerce and more home meal things. So it means the people eat more at home, what is more relevant for the supermarket products instead of the big market for the big kitchens and restaurants. And what it means also for the long term, it's there are several theories out there, but what I think is just obvious is that the spending power will be reduced in many areas due to crisis and the economic situations. And if there is less spending power and the people tend to spend less on eating and they move to discounters and lower or non-premium brands, and this could be quite a significant change also on the loading and also the situation of the flexible packaging converters. But this is something where we are just in the middle of this transformation and where we are just trying to understand and support our customers the best. But what was very interesting for us to see in this big peak area, where we could support our customers with capacities in our competence centers to support them in the loading in peak seasons on some productions, like in printing and so on, where we were in a partnership with some of our customers. And this was quite an interesting opportunity for us as well.
Okay, so those are what's been happening, and as we hopefully come out of it, nobody knows what's going to happen in the winter, of course, but hopefully we'll do that. But do you think some of these trends are going to stick, Christian? I mean, we see the huge growth in Amazon. Similar things are happening in Tencent and companies in China and across the world. How is it? Do you think that COVID will have a permanent impact on the flexible packaging sector?
Yeah, no, for sure, because the more the people stay at home and avoid any unnecessary social contact for whatever reasons, they move more into the online shopping and those things. And I think we will see that more and more also for the normal grocery shopping. So also food and home and personal care things will be more and more bought online. And so I think this is a trend that we will see and that will continue. It means as well for the flexible packaging industry that maybe the demands on the packaging will change, and so we will see. Yeah, because I'm now exaggerating a bit, but maybe in future it's not anymore so important that it looks brilliant in the supermarket. It needs to be differently specified to survive the delivery with via online shopping. It's maybe exaggerating, but it's just one of them.
Into the supply chains in that. But I also think, Phil, that I think that your point about the smaller brands sort of coming back is going to be significant, sort of going forward. And one of the interesting things is that if you go to the supermarket to pick up your toothpaste or your toilet paper, and there isn't any, consumers are trying different things. And marketers are seeing this, and they are introducing new ranges. Is that something you're seeing, Phil?
Yes, and one thing we are seeing is the producers still want to make an impact on the customer, even with an online product. So it's a slightly different dynamic. You're not trying to get someone to pick the product up. You're not trying to get them to touch it in the supermarket, but you want to get them to buy into your brand and gain that brand loyalty by there being something quirky or just something different about the packaging, the quality feel of it. You take it out of the Amazon box, what's presented to you. What's that sort of first feeling that you get when you handle the product, and is it a quality product, and are you going to buy it again the next time? So it's a different psychology to the supermarket sale. But as things grow, even mail order companies that send out regular shipments, they see it as an opportunity to market different products, to be able to get a message to the consumer, and they know it's going to get to them because it's delivered to their door, and they open that packet and they see what's inside. So I think that's a slightly different dynamic in terms of where the market's going, and the more online shopping grows, the more control of that first impression and trying to get consumer loyalty will be put into the packaging.
The zero moment of choice and the experiential impacts are changing. Yeah, quite why there are so many unboxing videos on YouTube is, like many things on YouTube, a mystery to me, but the numbers probably don't lie. If we move on to the next topic, I suppose there are some implications with the COVID in there. But as an industry, flexible packaging has a pretty bad name for single-use plastic. Far too much of it ends up in the oceans, and it's a very brave person who will stand up and criticize David Attenborough when he shows us marine life suffering hugely. But one of the things I'm hearing is that single-use packaging is actually growing with more consumer eating at home, as you said, Phil, in that area. And one of the interesting applications has been some supermarkets banning multi-use bags for life. You have to pack things into a clean, hygienic, new plastic bag. And the plastic bag seems to be making a comeback. Do you think that flexible packaging is well positioned to boost its sustainability position, Christian, for example?
So what is clear with the COVID, was the value that is perceived with plastic changed dramatically. At the beginning or prior to COVID, everything was, the human being, the nature and all that stuff was priority number one. And so recyclability and sustainability was priority number one also in the industry. We all have seen it on LinkedIn and so on with the let's say ambitious goals that the brand owners and driven by governmental regulations, NGOs and all that stuff were putting on their shoulders. And of course, the industry is moving heavily in this direction, and we do really big steps where we are let's say substituting aluminium in the lamination by high barrier films and high barrier coatings, for example with our vacuum metallizing lines and our coating lines. And also then if we think about water-based printing and water-based lamination and barrier adhesives and all those things, these are developments where all the partners, all the stakeholders in the industry, really from the beginning until it is in the supermarket, are moving in that direction. And I think it's the right move, and we have quite a good speed on that. And I'm very proudly I can say that Bobst is part of this solution and this trend and this strong move, accelerated transformation towards more sustainability and recyclability. But of course, it's a big change. Monomaterials to do that and all those things, it's quite a challenge. But together with our industry partners, we are really here. And we can proudly say that we have already industrialized solutions that could be used in the industry to produce 100% recyclable packaging. And the journey is not over, so it's really we are on the way, and it's quite exciting. This is one of the exciting things in flexible packaging at the moment.
Yeah. What about from your perspective, Phil? Are your customers talking about sustainability?
They are. It comes up in every conversation when you start talking about packaging with the customer base, and we're proud to push the benefits of flexible packaging because you need to look at the whole picture. And I know that the press focuses on one environmental issue at a time, but when you combine global warming with single-use plastic, there's a mismatch of arguments there where flexible packaging has massive benefits to the reduction in carbon footprint of materials that are used, globally, and that in its own is incredibly sustainable if we have the centrally driven systems that are developed to deal with the plastic waste. And I think that's the key issue is not so much the production of single-use plastics, it's how they're managed post-consumer. But we're developing and we're producing monopolymer packaging. We're producing packaging that can be recycled. And that is part of our business that we know we have to have, and it's something that we continue to develop. Different polymers, but trying to stick with monopolymer production to ease the recycling chain.
Using monomaterials rather than the multi-layer constructions for performance.
Yeah. So
which obviously are easier to recycle.
Exactly, yeah. Particularly in the UK, the UK's got a very mixed recycling policy. It's very localised to different boroughs, and it becomes a very complex situation. So if you can produce packaging with materials that are widely recycled throughout the UK and Europe, then that's obviously a good thing. But they don't meet all needs. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done to appreciate the benefits of flexible packaging over other forms of packaging, and to develop the post-consumer processes that will drive the improvement in our global situation, so that plastic doesn't end up in landfill or end up in the sea.
Yeah,
it actually gets properly dealt with.
Yeah, and that infrastructure is developing all the time, and we have to educate people that it's available, and make sure that they, because it's people that throw things away, it's not plastic itself, of course.
Exactly, plastic's not the enemy. Yeah.
So, Christian, obviously, Bob's has been doing a lot of work. Is this the similar thing for yourself and your company?
So no, of course. I mean, and thanks for sharing the slide with sustainability. I think we have here, it is very important that you only can master this sustainability topic if you really master the full supply chain. And of course, you need to have partners, strong industry partners from material, so resin suppliers, film producers. You need to have ink and adhesive suppliers on your side, and it's very important for us. And we go together in the direction to support the converters in the direction towards more sustainability, to have industrialized solutions on that. And without the strong partners and without a partnership that with the same goal of having industrial solutions at the end, it's not possible. And we have a lot of projects going on in that respect, and some of them were announced last year in K-Show, and we will continue also within this year to share also here some industrialized solutions that we develop together with our partners. But also, it's not only about film production, it's also about what are the other production steps that are contributing to sustainability, like water-based flexoprinting, where we just announced the 600 meters per minute high quality record that we have there in flexoprinting. And this is something that we also need to consider, that every production step has to contribute to a sustainable solution at the end.
I think it's also fair to say that Bob's is one of the most far-sighted manufacturers. You have a history of getting the important people in the supply chain together, because you cannot make a solution by yourself. You have to do it in conjunction with the other equipment and manufacturing, inks, adhesives, everyone across the supply chain working together, I think.
And it's also important that we understand, and I think for flexible packaging, that's quite important, that film, and this is, we also need to be honest to ourselves, we cannot replace film by itself, so by paper or whatever other ideas that out there 100%. For some niche markets, barrier paper and all that stuff is a trend, and something that of course we are also working on. But if we want to protect the food with, and there you need barrier functionality, and you want to have recyclable flexible packaging material, so you don't want to use aluminum, then your possibilities are limited. And we are happy to have here also a solution with our vacuum metallizers from Manchester that are on the forefront in those barrier developments.
Great, okay. So what you're talking about is performance, and I suppose that is one of the real reasons that flexible packaging is growing so strongly. It performs brilliantly at lightweight and provides an awful lot of real benefits when you analyze the life cycle properly against alternatives. But the other one that's usually interesting is the customer convenience. People like the ability to have a resealable pack to keep the produce fresh in the lifetime. And Phil, I think you were telling me about your Ziploc and capabilities. And is this something that you're finding consumers are valuing?
Yeah, definitely. The whole packaging, storage space, the fact that the pack can be zipped up and get smaller as it's used. It's all about the convenience, and also on the waste cycle. You're not trying to put a huge container or a container full of air into the bin that you can't crush, or into your recycling that you can't break down. So there is a great deal of convenience to flexible packaging, but that's not just the consumer. There's the massive benefits to the whole supply chain in terms of being lightweight and not taking up space. The numbers used is 26 trucks to 1 in terms of shipping rigid pack versus flexible pack. So that the whole supply chain benefits from the reduction in weight and reduction in space storage and reduction in trucks trundling up and down the road. So it's a very neat solution that is very convenient. So,
and it's interesting to see the range of products that are moving from metal, glass, rigid boxes, plastic boxes. And I think I was very surprised when the first time I saw a Campbell's soup in a pouch. I was a little surprising. But I think there are lots of very good stories that are not obvious, as you say, with some of the news reports that we hear. Time is moving on, so I've put on, is the traditional supply chain doing? What I mean by that is the way that the big brands have huge volumes, they have low unit cost of production, and they flood supermarkets. It takes some time for the produce for the packs to be delivered. We've talked about e-commerce. We've talked about small brands coming out. Are we seeing real pressure on the traditional supply chain? And if we are doing, how will we be able to replace what exists now with something that better suits the consumer demands and brand demands going forward? So Phil, you're a digital packaging print company. Is digital packaging the way to go ahead to make the supply chain better?
Digital packaging certainly serves a sector of the market. In labels that's covered because the amount of volume you can produce is a smaller product. In flexible packaging is slightly different because the pack sizes are bigger, so it has there's more of a volume situation. But there's definitely a trend towards the bigger brands wanting to appear smaller, so they want to appear more local, more niche product, and that does drive down the volumes and increases complexity, which is where digital does come into it. But it's I think that the big brands know they have to be agile to keep up with the new generations of consumer coming through who don't want to stick with one thing for their lives. They want to move, they want to change, they want to see something different, and they want to see it on a regular basis. So with all of that, the flexibility of digital and the capability to respond quickly, very quickly, to market conditions is perfect. But it's in flexible packaging, it's at a scale at the moment, as we saw by the graphs, where it can't sustain the big volume. The numbers are still there, but it's just becoming more complex. So that's where conventional and digital needs to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. But from Bob's perspective, Christian, the trends that Phil's talking about there, how is Flexo and Gravure going to, are they going to be able to improve to try and meet some of these demands for shorter runs and more varieties?
So in principle, Of course, digital printing and flexible packaging is growing, but what we think is that it is quite still for some niches where there are really solutions there that are attractive for the brand owners. So there needs to be a space for the conventional technologies in the industry, and it will be, and there is a big role that those technologies have to play. And important here is the innovations that are necessary to digitalize, and this is also one of the next topics that we also can talk about, because if we think about short runs, we also need to think how we can innovate and digitalize in gravure printing. And what we did in Bobst, for example, was, and this was just announced a few weeks ago, it's the one ECG for gravure, for example, where we digitalized the color matching process for gravure printing, what in principle cuts the setup time and the setup waste in half, what is a huge innovation step and a huge productivity step for gravure printing. And in flexo printing, with the Master M6 from our factory in Florence, where we have the ink on demand and digicolor, where we digitalize the inking process and the color matching, where we have almost no setup time and setup waste, but is a fantastic breakthrough innovation that we introduced in the flexible packaging industry. So this is for us very important, and also for our customers, that whatever you do with digital printing, what is very important, and where there is a market and a niche market, you should not forget about the conventional technologies that also need to make a step towards digitalization. Of course, it's not digital because it's not 0-1, but it is digitalized and also supporting then our next topic, Industry 4.0, about that.
Yeah. Okay. I noticed that the time is sort of coming toward the end of our session. We've talked a little bit about the industrialization and Industry 4.0, the requirements for more agility, faster response, and packaging on demand. Sadly, it's a topic that we could speak to for a lot longer, but the time doesn't let me. So if we can sort of wrap this up, both for Phil and Christian, what's your view of the key future developments that are going to shape the flexible packaging market over the next few years that we really ought to be aware of? Phil, I think I probably know what some of the answer is going to be here, I think.
Well, from our perspective, it is about that growing of those smaller brands, and the continued. I think as we come out of COVID, there's going to be more people who've had ideas on the back burner, this little project they wanted to start off, and I think they're going to start to come out of the woodwork more and more. So, the whole way to supply into those guys and the bigger brands that need fast, reactive to what's happening in the marketplace packaging, is having the whole system streamlined. So it's no good having a digital press if you can't get the work to it quickly enough. If you spend hours in admin, you need the whole business to be digitized, the whole supply chain. It's all going to be driven from someone sat on a phone coming up with a design and placing their orders. So the whole digital revolution in terms of the markets that I'm talking about is only going to work if we've streamlined everything from start to finish, and that's the critical. It's been done in labels. It started 15 years ago in labels, and is now industry wide, and that's where the next steps in digital production of flexible packaging will need to go.
Yeah, and Christian, you touched on that in the last thing. I assume that's a similar a view from Bobst and yourself.
So for me, the future developments are Of course, flexible packaging will grow. There is no question about it, because of all the trends that we were saying, and the challenges will be up there. But from a flexible packaging production point of view, I think the future will be important, or it will be even more important for our customers and for the flexible packaging industry to master the full supply chain, and not only having the substrate value chain, but having next to it also the data value chain. And you need to manage both. So really from the specification PDF until the digital twin, you need to manage all the production steps, but not only from a substrate point of view, also from a data value point of view. And this is, for example, where we announced also the BOPS Connect platform for that. And this is something that will be for the production of flexible packaging key for the future.
Okay, great. Well, sadly, the time has beaten us, as somebody says. So I think we'll sort of gloss over that. It's down to me to sort of draw this event to a close and to express my sincere thanks to Christian and Phil for making it extraordinarily easy to moderate this discussion and fascinating discussion. You have various contact points here. If there's any queries or questions that anybody has, please follow up. We'd be more than delighted to hear from you. Phil, thank you. Christian, thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to hand back to Fraser.
Yeah, just to say to all of you, excellent session. Thank you very much. Could have carried on, but just conscious of time. Sean, thank you very much for gathering everyone together. And Phil and Christian, thanks very much for your fantastic contribution.